This is Ian Cameron for Sportsbook Review, and today I am previewing the Pac-12 North Division for the upcoming college football season. It is hard to believe we're about 3 weeks away from the college football season. It is going to be here before you know it. Today we're going to look at the Pac-12 North. Later this week I'll be covering the Pac-12 South, so it's all about the Pac-12 this week as we continue our Power 5 Conference college football season previews. Let's get to it. Let's start with the Stanford Cardinal, one of the co-favorites, I guess you could say, to win the Pac-12 North Division this season. Stanford, definitely the talent to win this division, just as they've been a force in the last 3 or 4 years, but there's definitely concerns and questions they've got to answer. New quarterback, of course, we know Kevin Hogan is gone. It'll be either Keller Christ or Ryan Burns taking over under center. So inexperience at the quarterback position. The offensive line is going to have to replace everyone on the left side. Left tackle, left guard, center, all gone from last year's team. So question marks there. They do have Christian McCaffrey, their Heisman Trophy candidate running back from last season, once again returning. Scintillating year for him. He was phenomenal. The receiving corps does have a little bit more depth, a little bit more speed on the wide-out positions as well, which is good to see. They didn't have a lot of deep threat, big quick strike touchdown ability at receiver last year, so there might be a little more of that this year from this Stanford team. On defense, they got a very talented and deep front seven that is very experienced as well. A group that should be able to not only stop the run, but also be able to get a pass rush on opposing quarterbacks. The secondary last year wasn't great by any stretch of the imagination, but they should be improved. They've got two very good cornerbacks, and they also get senior safety Zach Hoffpower back on the team. Remember, last year he left the team because he wanted to try playing baseball. Well, he's back filling out his final year of eligibility. That should help some depth in at the secondary, and they also have their senior kicker back, Conrad Ukrepina, and boy, he was very good. Big weapon in the special teams with him as their kicker once again this season. Stanford, a good team. The talent's there, but the thing that's going to potentially hold Stanford back this season, in my opinion, is the schedule. It's a brutal schedule. You got Kansas State and Notre Dame in non-conference play. Look at the Pac-12 slate. At UCLA, at Washington, at Arizona, at Oregon, and at Cal. That's a huge obstacle they've got to overcome. Inexperience, too, at the quarterback position. We're not quite sure what Christ or Burns are going to deliver at the quarterback position for this team. So I think this could be a bet against team early on, Stanford. Could take an adjustment period for them. They could be overvalued point spread-wise early in the season as the offense copes with a new quarterback, revamped offensive line on the left side, which is always the key side of that offensive line. Even in week one, we're seeing Stanford laying more than 2 touchdowns against Kansas State in the opener. I'm kind of interested in Kansas State. I'm going to do more digging in that game. Maybe looking at a play on Kansas State plus the points in that week one game facing this Stanford team. Oregon Ducks next up on our Pac-12 North Division preview. Oregon 9-4 last season, and let's be honest, for some teams that's a good season. For Oregon, that's a disappointment, especially going back to the Chip Kelly era when this team was just fantastic. But they've definitely got some issues coming into this season, and things are going to have to overcome. They've got a new offensive coordinator, Matt Lubick, the quarterback coach, taking over those reins. Scott Frost, who was the OC, is now the head coach with Central Florida, so new look there. Oregon, a new starting quarterback. It looks like it's going to be Montana State transfer Dakota Prukop. Of course, Vernon Adams, 1 year at Oregon, and he's gone. Prukop looks like the guy who's going to take over. He's a dual-threat quarterback, can throw and run from all reports. 3 new starters on the offensive line, so it could take time for that group to gel. They're absolutely loaded at the skill positions. Running back and wide receiver, this team has a ton of playmakers, but new quarterback, offensive line that has to gel. Those are going to be things that might hold back this offense a little bit, at least early in the season. On defense, no getting around how bad that defense was. Every time they played a big offense, a big-time team last year, that defense crumbled, couldn't get the job done. That's why they've hired a new defensive coordinator. Don Pelham gone. Brady Hoke, former San Diego State and Michigan head coach, brought in as the new DC here with this Oregon team. And, Brady Hoke gets criticized for not doing a good job at Michigan as a head coach, but that was more offensive issues they had. They couldn't get the offense going with him there. The defense actually improved when Brady Hoke was the head coach at Michigan. He does know that side of the football as a DC, and I think as a DC he has the chance to at least turn this Oregon defense around a little bit. They gave up 37.5 points per game last year. That's not good enough. A shift from 3-4 to 4-3 defense in terms of the scheme, that could be a little bit of an adjustment. There is talent, but it's a young secondary. Struggled greatly last season. They should be improved, have a little bit more experience this year. Should be an improved group overall. Oregon is going to score points, but just how good they are in the North Division and in the Pac-12 race in general, it's going to come down to that defense and just how much better Brady Hoke can make that group here in this upcoming season. All right, Washington Huskies, another team with a chance to maybe emerge as Pac-12 North champs. Why not? Why not Washington? I mean, you're looking at a team that now has Chris Peterson, third year as the head coach. Third year is always the big year where you usually see teams make that jump, big jump forward in a head coach's third season with the team. That could happen here. Systems are in place. His recruits are there now. He's got the quarterback that he wants, and Jake Browning, who really played better as the season went on last year, should take a big step forward now in his second year. Solid numbers last year. The offensive line has 3 starters back, including the left tackle, left guard. Good depth at the skill positions, running back, wide receiver, tight end, so should be enough playmakers. A solid Washington defense last year on the other side of the football, and that defense could be dominant this year. They really look like they've got potential. 9 starters back on this defense this season. Very experienced and strong at linebacker. 4 starters back in the secondary, including multiple guys with high-end NFL prospect potential in that Washington secondary. So this should be a very stingy defense this year. They were good against the run last year. Could be even better than that this year. The only bad news for Washington is when you look at their divisional schedule, they face Stanford and Oregon, the other 2 contenders in this division, on the road. So that could be a little bit of a tricky obstacle to overcome, but you could make an argument on paper Washington's got the best defense in this division, and that could be enough to put them right in there as a Pac-12 North contender this season. All right, next up we've got the Washington State Cougars. This is a team that I absolutely fell in love with last year. They were very good to my bankroll. I was cashing numerous tickets last year with the Washington State Cougars. 9-4 season, a big turnaround season, a Sun Bowl win against Miami. After years of being one of the worst teams in the conference, the Cougars really had a big bounce back year. They had a tremendous high-powered offense, a better-than-normal defense, which is a big reason why they've greatly surpassed expectations last year. And Luke Falk, to me, one of the better quarterbacks last year in the country, and I think he'll be one of the best quarterbacks in the country this year. 5th in the nation in passing yards last year. They have 3 offensive line starters back, ton of experience and quality depth at running back and wide receiver, including the senior Gabe Marks at wide receiver. He's returning to this team. Seems like he's been there forever. The defense, they lose a couple of key pass rushers, but there was a big step forward for that defense, a defense that was terrible, really, for Washington State prior to last year, but 3 of their top 4 corners in the secondary are back. They seem to be recruiting bigger, stronger athletes on that side of the football, which is a positive sign for a team that's really struggled to recruit top-tier talent on the defensive side of the football, especially during the Mike Leach era. But it looks like they're starting to improve their recruiting defensively. We'll see if they can keep building, because that defense was better last year than it was at any point in Mike Leach's tenure. Can they continue to take strides forward? Because this offense is going to produce. That's all there is to it. If Luke Falk stays healthy and this offensive line is as good as it was last year, they're going to score. They're going to flat out score 30 points, maybe even 40 points per game. How far Washington State goes will be that defense. Can it be as good as it was last year? Maybe can it be even better than it was last year? That remains to be seen. But if it can be as good or better on defense as they were last year, this is a sleeper in the division. I really do believe that. They honestly could sneak up and win this Pac-12 North. Now, things have to break the right way. They've got to face Stanford, Oregon, and Washington. That's not going to be an easy slate to deal with. But they have legitimate sleeper potential, and I do think Washington State could be a moneymaker again this year from a point spread perspective, just like they were a year ago. California Golden Bears, the next team we look at as the post-Jared Goff era begins. The number 1 overall pick to the Los Angeles Rams, gone. But boy, what a great situation for head coach Sonny Dykes. It's not often you can replace a Jared Goff with an experienced veteran quarterback like Davis Webb, the Texas Tech transfer, who, by all reports, is going to be the starting quarterback for this team. But that is a tremendous situation for Cal, that Davis Webb, a guy with as many starts under his belt as he has, is going to be the starting quarterback. Of course, he's had a shoulder injury a couple years ago at Texas Tech, lost the starting job to Patrick Mahomes, which is a big reason why he ended up transferring here to Cal. But he's going to be the starting quarterback here. And Sonny Dykes, he runs the same air raid, pass-heavy, up-tempo offense. He learned it under Mike Leach at Texas Tech a decade ago. And so Davis Webb, this should be a system that fits him perfectly. So he should have not much of a learning curve here, should be able to step in, perform well right away. Lots of talent to replace at wide receiver. That's a concern, but the offensive line's solid. Ground attack, very deep. Great stable of running backs. Defense is the concern, though, with Cal, like it was last year. It was not a great defense last year, and boy, they've got some concerns going into this year as well. Hardy Nickerson, top tackler from last year, left the team, transferred to Illinois because his father is the defensive coordinator, hired by Lovie Smith at Illinois, but so that's a big loss, big hole they're going to have to fill. Top two pass rushers have graduated as well, so pressure on the quarterback could be an issue. Defensive line against the run should be okay. Secondary returns 3 starters, may have some decent depth there, but still a lot of holes and a lot of concerns and question marks on the defensive side of the football. Cal's offense, Davis Webb and that team should be able to put up points, but again, defense gave up 31 points per game last year. They're probably going to be involved in a lot of shootouts. They're probably going to have to win 38-35 or 42-38. They're probably going to have to outscore teams to win games, because I think that defense is still a little bit of an area of concern for Cal heading into the season. Could be once again an over-the-total team on a week-to-week basis, this Cal Golden Bears squad in the new upcoming season. Oregon State Beavers to wrap up the Pac-12 North, and boy, this team, hard to see them escaping the basement in this division. It's just such a huge gap for Oregon State to make up between them and the rest of this division, that even if they improve modestly or even improve pretty well, take a major step forward, they still might finish last in this division. That's just how much rebuilding they have to go through. I mean, 2-10 straight up, 3-9 against the spread last year, an abysmal season for the Beavers. 11-game losing streak for this program in the Pac-12 in conference play since 2014. Very tough season for Gary Anderson in his first year as Oregon State head coach, after being the head coach at Utah State and Wisconsin previously to that. The good news is they got a new quarterback. Get Seth Collins out of there. He was terrible. I mean, especially throwing the football. Yeah, he had some mobility, but his accuracy and his ability to throw accurate passes is pathetic. So, the Oregon State quarterback situation has to, especially when they bring in Utah State transfer Darryl Garrettson. He's been around for a few years. Worked at quarterback under Anderson at Utah State years ago. He's got experience. The quarterback production can only go up for this team from the abysmal performance and output they got from Seth Collins last year. So Darryl Garrettson, an experienced guy, should be a little bit of a calming influence at quarterback for this Oregon State offense. The offensive line should be improved with 3 starters back. They do have an experienced receiving core as well. And they're not going to ask Garrettson to do too much. There's still going to be a run-first offense, hand the ball off. That's still going to be their modus operandi. Defense, though, does have some concerns, just like it did last year. It was a terrible defense last year. Kalani Sitake left his post as Oregon State DC to become head coach at BYU, so a new DC and Kevin Clune taking over. Lots of new faces on the defensive line, so where's that pass rush going to come from? Are they going to be able to stop the run? They do at least have some decent experience and depth at linebacker and in the secondary, and to me they are going to be better, Oregon State, but the problem is, and they are going to be tougher, they're not maybe going to get as blown out and just annihilated to the extent that they did last season in many of their games, but it's one thing to be more competitive, and they probably will be, but is it going to add up to more wins than they had last year? I don't think so. I mean, maybe 3 wins, 4 wins, 5 if you're going to be absolutely generous, but I still think it's going to be another losing year. Another year without a bowl game for Oregon State. Just too much work left to be done in this rebuilding job to expect them to just automatically be that much better here in year 2 of Gary Anderson's tenure. So Oregon State still a long ways away from being relevant, as far as I'm concerned, here in the Pac-12. All right, that's going to wrap it up. That's my look at the Pac-12 North. I'll be back later this week to look at the Pac-12 South. I'm sports handicapper Ian Cameron for Sportsbook Review. Until next time.
Do your research before you bet. Check out our ratings guide to see which books have the best ratings and sign-up bonuses. Open up several accounts and shop for lines at sbrodds.com. Always be ahead of the game.